Let's get across the market open now. Kai Chen joining us from MPC Markets. Kai, welcome to Wednesday. Let's take a look first at what we saw in the US market overnight. Well, look, it was fairly mixed. In fact, the Nasdaq snapping 6 days of gains there.
Yes, we are seeing basically the equity market is back at record highs after all the Iran conflict has been resolved. To be seen. I think there's still assessments coming out in terms of the effectiveness of the strike, but the market's basically discounted that corrective move over the last month. Now, in terms of US stock news, last night the big one was Tesla. Tesla's was down about 5%. Basically, the feud between Elon and Trump coming back to the forefront. Elon's still very displeased with the big beautiful bill. It's estimated to bring about $3.3 trillion of additional spending to the US government, which they can't afford. So, we're seeing this discrepancy, and that's really affected Tesla. And I mean, it's got a bit ugly where Trump's saying we're going to pull back all the EV subsidies, wants to deport him back to South Africa. So, yeah, definitely not good for shareholders in Tesla.
Yeah, well, obviously, look, it's been a volatile stock, hasn't it? Very much based on this fallout between Donald Trump and Elon
Yeah.
Musk. So, will you just be a little wary at this point as to where it could go?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's a lot of politics involved in this, and I think, fundamentally, Tesla's still a good stock. They've got a lot of great things going where they're trying to roll out the robo taxi. But obviously, with all this political news coming out, it's certainly going to be volatile. And, I still think there's great opportunity. It might be at a lower price. But I think in the long run, Tesla is still a solid company to be in.
All right. Oh, we were trying to get the chart up there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it up. Let's now look. Of course, we're heading towards that July 9 deadline for trade negotiations over tariffs. In fact, President Trump indicating earlier this morning he will not extend that. So potentially, what's at risk here? He's already said, look, not happy with the Japanese. That looks unlikely to get any deal across the line there. Whereas India looks as though they're going to do a deal there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the initial promise was that a lot more trade deals would be done very soon. And as we've seen over that period, the pause period, 90-day pause period, not much results have come out of it. And I don't think he's going to extend, well, from what he said, he's not going to extend the pause period. So yeah, it's to be seen. I don't think the market's really discounted this because the big issue that the market had was with the China tariffs, where it was quite substantial. It does seem that the US and China were able to reach a deal of some sort. Although there are still tariffs placed on China in terms of their exports, it's a lot better than what it was when they were going for tit for tat. So, it's not great in terms of tariffs, but I think it's not as bad as what initially the market were assessing. I think, obviously the market is at record highs. It wants to go higher, unless we hear substantially worse news coming out of the tariff deals. I think the market's just going to head higher.
Now, also, we have Trump's big, beautiful bill has got through the Senate only just now, going back to the lower house for approval. Should we be wary of if that now becomes law, it's legislated? What do you think the likely response is market wise?
Yeah, I think the market will like this because at the end of the day, this is a tax relief. Now, for the markets, this is a good thing, where it's tax cuts. But I think in the long run, in terms of the US fiscal position, it's not very good, right? Like over 10 years, it's going to add another 3.3 trillion to an already massive debt ceiling that the US has. And it's going to just cause more pressure, which Elon is right. So, I think even some of the other hardline Republicans are wary of putting this through. There's some in there. So, like, Yeah, I just don't think in the long run it's good for the US.
Okay, let's come back locally, what we're seeing, and we are expecting a higher open this morning. What are you watching for?
Yes, so the market's been on the local front, the market's been fairly quiet. We're seeing some really good performance out of defense stocks. So that's been the theme that's worked for the last half a year with all the geopolitical turmoil and uncertainty. Drone Shield's done spectacularly well. It had a correction earlier this year where it was under $1, but that moved back up. Now it's at $2, around $2, 30 or 35, I think. So it's made a massive move on the upwards, and this is a very similar trend that we're seeing across all defense stock globally, right? So, I mean, with all the policies where, say for example, the EU, everyone's forced to raise their defense spending to 5%. And also in Australia, I mean, the US is pressuring Australia to raise their defense spending to 5% as well. But I think there's a little bit of pushback from our government. But yeah, in general, like we're going to continue to see defense spendings increase. So I think naturally it's got to go somewhere into these defense stocks. So, it's certainly a great thematic for us. Drone Show on a local front is a very good stock to go into. Uh, I think there's an argument where, they've won actually in a couple of weeks ago, they won a very crucial contract. But obviously, like in terms of valuations, it is quite staggering compared to what they are making. But I think the market is more forward looking at the potentials that it could create. So yeah, I think Drainshell is quite good. Otherwise, gold and silver has been steadily going up. It's had a bit of a consolidation period for the last week or two, but the trend is still extremely strong.
All right, so you're still favouring those gold stocks because, as you mentioned, actually the gold price has consolidated. Those local gold stocks seen a lot of profit taking there, particularly at year end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, it had a really good run for about 6 months or so. Northern Star, as well as Newmont, Evolution's done incredibly well, actually. So, all these gold stocks have done very well. I think, a lot of the gold miner owners taking a little bit of profit off the table. Um, I think, I think this is actually healthy in terms of a correction for gold stocks. If you see like a parabolic move in these stocks, usually it's unsustainable where, you're going to have a massive correction. Whereas like if it goes up steady and people take profits, there's going to be another uptrend. I think it's actually better for the long run trend in these gold stocks.